Hello, good morning, everybody. I am very excited today because we are very lucky to have Sam Gamlin here with us. She is a wonderful resource. It's been a very wonderful resource for me. She's our K-12 institutional market specialist in FedBC, but actually I met her like a year ago and a half or something like that when she was in Coalition for Healthy School Food. So I've been very honored to attend few of her webinars, and she knows a lot about BC produce and all those kind of things. So I'm always feel very, very pleased to have experts to come and visit us. So I will welcome her, and then she will give us a presentation. She will take some questions at the end, but if you feel that, it's something interesting and you want to write it on the chat instead of waiting, please feel free to do that. And then Sam will answer all the questions at the end. Yes, so welcome, Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really pleased to be here. Really excited to meet some new folks here today. I'm just going to share my screen and presentation here, and then share it from the beginning. Okay. And can I get maybe a thumbs up if you can see the presentation? Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks again for inviting me here today. My name is Sam Gambling. I work for the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food as a K-12 institutional market specialist with the Feed BC team. I'm currently calling in from unceded Coast Salish territories, homelands of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, known today as the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. And I feel really privileged and honored to be on this land as a settler. Very grateful to the Lekwungen people as the original stewards and caretakers of this land and cultivators of a thriving Kwetwel food system and culture. And I learned recently Kwetwel is the camas bulb. I know we're all calling in today from diverse homelands of Indigenous peoples across the province, and I just want to bring our attention to the sheer diversity of cultures and histories, and given today's conversation, food sheds and traditional food systems that exist across this large province. This is both a challenge, but also an opportunity to explore and navigate as we work to bring more local BC food into schools and more traditional foods into schools. And I'm committed to doing this role in a good way to honor the traditional lands and cultures of First Nations peoples. And I'll speak more to some resources to bring more Indigenous foods into schools a little bit later in this presentation. So the agenda for today's meeting, we'll just start with, I'm probably going to speak maybe for 15 minutes or so. I'll introduce Feed BC and our role in the Feeding Futures program. I'll give a bit of information about the what and why of BC Foods, and I'll provide some resources to support school food purchase decision makers with sourcing and tracking BC Foods in K-12 school food programs. And then we'll have about 15 minutes for open discussion and Q&A to answer any questions on this Feed BC work, or an opportunity for you to share some success stories or some challenges you're experiencing in sourcing BC food products. Okay, that's a bit of background. Feed BC is a provincial government initiative led by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and in partnership with other ministries, to encourage, inspire, and support a shift to serve more BC food in public institutions. The Feed BC program is actively working with 6 BC health authorities who operate 170 hospitals and residential care facilities, as well as with 20 BC post-secondary institutions and 10 correctional facilities across the province. And more recently, as part of the province's Feeding Futures program, in alignment with the Feeding Futures guiding principles, which you can see on the slide there, Feed BC is now working with the Ministry of Education and Childcare and on the ground with school districts and food supply chain partners to introduce Feed BC into new and expanded K-12 school food programs. What this actually looks like on the ground is me helping K-12 schools and districts to source and track more BC foods over time, and to incorporate learning opportunities about local food, agriculture, and food systems into school food programs. Today, I'm mostly going to focus on the sourcing and tracking component of this work. My colleague, Alana Petrella, is the the local food literacy expert, and I'm sure she'd be happy to come and chat with you about local food literacy. And she's going to be doing a webinar on local food literacy later this spring as well. So happy to kind of speak a little bit to that, but my main focus of this work is around the sourcing and tracking component of BC Food into schools. So I'm talking about BC Food into schools. What do I actually mean by that? Since 2017, Feed BC has worked with public sector institutions to develop a recommended and consistent definition for a BC food. So Feed BC defines a BC food as any final food product that's produced and or processed within British Columbia. A BC produced food is a raw food product that's grown, caught, harvested, or raised in BC. For example, tomatoes grown in a greenhouse in Abbotsford or salmon caught from a river in Lillooet would be a BC produced food. Unless a school or school district has a centralized kitchen, however, most food does not come into schools as raw products. So food processing is BC's second largest manufacturing industry after wood processing, and schools and districts are sure to come across BC processed foods as they seek out more BC food products. A BC processed food is a final food product that's undergone one or more of these three processing activities in a commercial food or beverage facility in BC. So one of the processing activities is general physical alterations. For example, grinding beef, milling wheat, crushing tomatoes, shredding cheese, chopping cucumbers, etc. Another processing activity is extending a food's shelf life. This can include freezing, like the frozen berries you see on the screen there, canning, drying, pickling, smoking, fermenting, etc. A final food processing activity is combining ingredients to make a new product. For example, baking muffins. The muffin would be a BC food. Making pizza, blending juices, mixing salad greens, and so on. I definitely recognize the definition is not perfect and is complicated when it comes to school food. It can get a little tricky when you're purchasing foods from vendors or caterers who may be making or purchasing on behalf of a school. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this if folks have specific examples you'd like to walk through. And the definition of BC food is described in more detail, and there's lots of specific examples in our K-12 tracking guide, which I'll be sure to share with you all and talk more about later in this presentation. So that's what a BC food is, but why are we encouraging schools who are juggling many priorities when it comes to school food programs to choose BC foods? We categorize the benefits in three main ways. So first, purchasing BC foods really strengthens regional food systems by providing a stable market for BC food businesses. And a strong regional food system that includes a diversity of food producers and processors is much more resilient, which is especially pertinent in times of international trade turbulence like we're experiencing right now. And they can respond more quickly to the evolving needs of K-12 schools and communities. Second, purchasing BC food really builds BC's economy. For every dollar spent on BC food in BC institutions, research has found there's a twofold value to the BC economy, including GDP and job growth. And lastly, getting BC food in school food programs can help students understand and connect to local food systems through hands-on food literacy education and relationships with local producers and processors. Okay, so that's the what and the why. Now for the how, and I'll just discuss two activities. One is sourcing BC foods and the other is tracking BC food purchases. So with the integration of Feed BC into Feeding Futures, all BC school districts are encouraged, not required, but encouraged to work towards a goal of sourcing 30% BC food for all K-12 school food programs that's using Feeding Futures dollars. BC's agriculture, food, and beverage sector is one of the most diverse in Canada, and there's a wide range of price competitive, everyday food products that schools can access. So schools and districts are encouraged to begin by working with existing school food suppliers and partners to identify and purchase BC foods, and then to keep learning and developing strategies over time to incorporate more BC foods. And it's our job at Feed BC to help schools and districts and school food partners as they work to source more BC foods into their meal programs. So there are several resources available for schools to start sourcing more BC foods. The first, and I would say the most comprehensive, is Feed BC's Getting Started Guide to Sourcing BC Foods in K-12 Schools. This was launched last spring, and it's currently available online on our website. And it was developed to support schools and districts at every stage of the school food program development and delivery to increase the use of BC foods incrementally as programs grow. The next resource listed there is the Feed BC directory, which is a searchable online BC food and beverage product database for institutional and commercial markets. We're currently doing some updates to it. It's going to have a name change very soon to the BC Food Directory. You should still be able to search it if you go online and check it out, but the new and improved version will be live later this month. That's going to incorporate a lot more by BC products as well. Another resource is the Feed BC Champions newsletter, which is a quarterly email that showcases BC products. So all school districts have at least one staff receiving these emails, but if you as an individual school would like to add your email to this newsletter, please get in touch and I can add you to the mailing list. Product lists are just what they sound like, lists of BC food products that have been developed by Feed BC based on what we hear from different institutions. Lists like this are a little hard because they are point in time documents based on information we get back, and they don't necessarily reflect current availability, and they haven't been vetted by the government. But I know many people find them really helpful just to have a list of products that other institutions are using. So I'm happy to share out these product lists following the webinar as well. And lastly, the By BC What's in Season webpage is a great resource to peruse, which outlines food products in season during every month of the year, as well as ideas for recipes. In terms of Indigenous food supports, Feed BC has been working for a number of years very closely with Quistanahan and Osier Consulting to develop Cooking in Two Worlds, which is an Indigenous food process guide. And this is available online. This resource was developed to support institutions with sourcing Indigenous foods in a good way. And the guide, as well as all the companion resources, can be found on the Feed BC website. And I'm happy to share that out after this webinar. And I should note as well, I'll mention this later, but there is an upcoming webinar at the end of this month that you're all invited to with Quistanahan, Jared Quistanahan Williams, who's an Indigenous chef and just an amazing person and resource as well, who will be speaking more about how to bring Indigenous foods into K-12 school food programs. Okay, so in addition to this, and in support of the 30% sourcing goal, one of the key components of the Feed BC program is supporting institutions to track BC food purchases. Tracking refers to a standardized process of measuring and reporting on the value of BC foods purchased by BC institutions. In other words, keeping track of how much food you buy comes from BC. So tracking can really help schools and districts better understand your food purchasing decisions, to identify opportunities to source more local BC foods, to demonstrate progress on the 30% local food sourcing goal over time, and importantly, to communicate Feeding Future's economic impacts across BC. This not only helps us in government really make the case for funding school food programs when we see how much is going back to our local communities across the province, but it also helps institutions with their food procurement activities and identifying where you can source more BC food products. So tracking and reporting BC food purchases is voluntary for the 2024-2025 school year. We do encourage schools and districts, however, to begin building capacity to track BC foods. But it's not currently required in Feeding Future's year-end reporting. And I don't know what that looks like moving forward. That's something we're still getting direction on. We want to make sure that we're moving in tandem with schools and districts, kind of where you're at along this process. So we're encouraging schools and districts to start small, to start where it feels most feasible, and to build your capacity to track more programs over time. We're also asking schools and districts to focus on tracking food that's been purchased using Feeding Futures dollars, not donated. So what we're measuring here is the amount of money spent on BC food as a percentage of the total food budget. So this does not include donated products. And we know that tracking takes time and effort. So as I mentioned, we're really committed to working alongside schools and districts throughout this process. So as you begin your tracking journey, please let us know how we can support you and reach out to me if you have any questions. The best resource and where I would point you to get started to learn how to track BC Foods is our Getting Started Guide to Tracking BC Food Purchases. And this guide outlines 5 key steps to tracking BC Food purchases, and then to use that food purchase data to figure out how you can use and bring more BC Food into your programs. This is my last slide here. I just wanted to say, in addition to those resources, which are all available online, and I'll be sure to send you all afterwards, we're really committed to providing ongoing supports and activities to help schools and districts source more BC food products for K-12 school food programs. For example, so I'll be providing one-on-one sourcing and tracking support from now until the end of the school year and into next year. So please reach out if you have any specific sourcing or tracking questions, and my email is on the screen there. We've also got an informal tracking learning group where schools and districts can come together to share experiences and kind of brainstorm and strategize together on how best to track BC food purchases. So again, send me an email if you're interested in joining this tracking learning group. And our first meeting is coming up, I believe, in the next week or two. So I'm happy to send over that invite if you want to join that. We've got a couple upcoming webinars, as I mentioned as well. So I recently hosted a BC food sourcing webinar at the end of January, and I'd be happy to share over that recording with you all if it hasn't already been shared with you. And at the end of February, there will be a webinar on Indigenous foods in school food programs. And as I mentioned, in April, there will be one on food literacy. The Great BC School Food Cook-Off is an exciting cooking contest and food literacy opportunity where students are encouraged to create recipes featuring local BC foods. And that's happening now until, or I guess it started in December until March 1st. And so there's more information about that at farmtoschoolbc.ca. And again, happy to share that link. And lastly, I wanted to mention From the Ground Up, which is a conference and a trade show happening June 5th through 7th in Vancouver that features 100% BC food and beverage brands. So it's a good way to kind of see what food products are out there that you could be sourcing for your programs. And these types of business-to-business events are something we're looking into, like how we can keep expanding and offering more to school districts, so and to schools. So stay tuned for opportunities to engage with local suppliers. Hopefully we'll have some more regional events and provincial events to tune into. Okay, I think that's it for now. I know that was a really high level overview of Feed BC and K-12. I quickly went through a lot of resources. So I'll be sure to send all of those resources out to you after this webinar. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any specific questions or comments. You can email me anytime at the email on the screen there. That's the generic email. My personal email was in the slide before, so you can email me at my personal one or this generic one. I monitor both. And yeah, I think I'll end the slideshow now, and then we can open it up to discussion, more informal discussion and Q&A. We'll end the slideshow here, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Sam. It's always a pleasure to hear, and I know this is very high level, as you mentioned, but it's a good introduction for people who are just getting familiar with BC produce and everything. So I don't know if anybody have any questions right now that would like to share or to take advantage that Tam is here and she can answer all of our questions.
I can try.
Yes, don't be shy, or write it on the chat if you feel that that's how you feel comfortable. But while people is thinking, I was just wondering, like, a lot of what is happening in our schools are people actually cooking in, right? So one of the questions really come is like, is that considered BC food? And so, but I remember saying, what happened with the flour that comes from maybe Alberta or those kind of things. So maybe you can just give us a little bit more details about that process.
So in-house food preparation is a little bit complicated. What you're going to be tracking in that case, in terms of identifying BC foods, is the food that you purchase for the food program that you're preparing. So you're going to be tracking the ingredients that you're purchasing. So that would be if the flour is coming from Alberta, that's not a BC food. But if you're purchasing juice from BC, that would be considered a BC food. If you're purchasing eggs from BC, that's a BC food. Yeah, the in-house one is a little bit trickier because the goal of this is you're tracking the foods that you're purchasing for your programs. If you're sourcing from an outside caterer, if the caterer is preparing the food in-house themselves, then they are preparing a BC food and you're purchasing the BC food from them. So I know it's not ideal that the food prepared in the school is tracked in a different way than the food prepared by a caterer. But again, I'm happy to go through any examples if people have specific questions. And this is just for tracking purposes. So it's not trying to encourage you to source from an outside caterer. It's just to make sure that there's a consistent approach to tracking purchases of foods. I don't know if that's helpful. And there's more details and like specific examples in the tracking guide, in our Q&A in the tracking guide. So I'd encourage you to read that too. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So we have a few questions here.
Yeah.
So Mike, they ask about, will companies like Sysco list BC food?
Yeah, yes. Depending on where you are, it will be easier or harder to identify BC foods from suppliers like Sysco. I know in the interior regions, Sysco does highlight BC foods in their vendor guide. And there is a local vendor guide from Sysco as well that you can kind of identify BC food products. In some cases, kind of in the lower mainland and in the north, they are not identifying the BC foods. You have to work with your rep, your Sysco rep, to help to ask them to identify BC foods for you. It's something as well that we're working at a provincial level with Sysco to try and encourage them to, to let them know there's a lot of institutions who are needing this information, and it would be very helpful if they could just identify the BC foods on the invoices, on the velocity reports. But at this point, you have a lot of power as a customer to request that information from Sysco. So I encourage you to reach out directly to your rep and ask them to track that food for you. I've heard that smaller suppliers are very willing to track, to identify BC foods as well. So if you are working with a regional or specialty distributor, definitely reach out to them as well and ask for their support.
Yes, thank you. Our next question is, if you purchase from a local Subway, how do we know if there is local BC food? And that's also, there is a lot of like importance and all those kind of places. And I mean, maybe you have.
So a Subway would be, and I may need to double check on this, but a Subway is preparing a sandwich, and that sandwich is considered a BC food because it was combining multiple ingredients to prepare a final product, which you are purchasing for your food program. So that sandwich would count as a BC food product because you were purchasing the final product, which was prepared by a BC food processor, essentially. They're acting as a food processor. So you don't need to track the ingredients that Subway is using. We do encourage our kind of vendors and caterers to use as much BC food as possible, but at that point, that's kind of the next layer, and it gets quite complicated to track. So in this case, the sandwiches would be considered a BC food.
Awesome. Our next question is, we use Feeding Futures dollars to purchase from Country Grocery, that is a locally owned with gift cards. As well, our Hot Lunch program purchases from local restaurants like Edo Japan, Subway, Panera. Is that classified as a BC food?
So again, what you are purchasing, think about what you're purchasing in terms of whether or not that is a BC food. So if you are purchasing pizza from a restaurant that was prepared by the restaurant, then that is considered a BC food because it was processed in BC. If you are purchasing something from a retailer, you're going to need to look at where the product comes from. So it's tricky when you're purchasing from a retailer. We're not recommending that it will take a long time to go through receipts and highlight kind of what is a BC food and what's not a BC food. That's maybe not the best place to start tracking, but I do know some school districts are doing it where you can identify when you're purchasing food from a retailer, what is a BC product and what's not a BC product. So again, happy to walk through any specific examples. If you want to send me an email, we can walk through things together, but you're going to want to be looking at what you purchase from the country grocer.
Awesome. Jenny's asking, is there any regulations or through implementing regulation for grocery stores or other food providers to provide this information and to provide it accurately?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very good question. I wish there was, personally. There's not currently. So this is something that FeedBC is going to be working on, is in consultation with retailers, trying to figure out, is there an opportunity to support tracking from retailers? It's very tricky right now, and we totally recognize that. And it's hard because not all BC products are labeled as such easily. There is the Buy BC logo, which when you're at a retailer, you can look for the Buy BC logo, and that's a BC food product. But not all BC food products have the Buy BC logo on it. So it is tricky. One option that we've seen from retailers that's worked for some schools and districts is if you have a repeating order from a retailer, and you know which products are BC foods, you just have to do it once, and then that repeating order keeps happening, and they can send you kind of an invoice of all of your orders if it's on one credit card, for example, throughout the school year. So that's in some cases I've heard that's a little bit easier, but no, there is not currently a regulation, and yes, it's something that we are hoping to, I don't know about regulation, but we're hoping to have conversations with retailers to make it easier. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, Jenny also replied to this. There is a push from Canadian Products right now, of course, that appear to be posting inaccurate information.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really tricky.
That's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Caroline is asking if they hand out gift cards from the local meat shops and vegetable stores. Is that considered acceptable as a BC food for our Feeding Futures product?
If you're handing out gift cards, so you're giving gift cards to families, I'm assuming, to purchase at local meat and vegetable shops. Yeah, that's a good question. I might bring that back to the team. I think because you are not purchasing the food yourself, but rather you're purchasing gift cards, I don't know if that would count in your reporting as like a food purchase, but I'm going to bring that back to the team, and I can get back to you with an answer there. That's a good question.
Thank you. Daniel is saying that they are a small school, so buying power is smaller, and they would like to find some local, smaller vendors. Are there any good vendors that you could recommend that reach out to help our goal? Daniel, can you tell us where you are exactly? So then Samantha will kind of locate it. Where is your...
Yeah, we're in the Okanagan.
Great. There are lots, you're food rich in the Okanagan. You've got a lot of access to local vendors for sure. Yes, I am. If you want to send me an email, actually, I can connect you with a few local vendors, and I'll supply the product lists, like I mentioned, so you can take a look through and see which producers and processors and even local distributors are near you that could support your local food purchasing goals. But yes, there are lots around you. So I'm just going to put my email in the chat here, and bc.ca, and you can send me an email with some specific questions, and I can get back to you.
Thank you, Samantha. And the last one is more about online schools, and we know that some of our independent online schools are using gift cards because, of course, that's the that's the resource that they are using.
Yeah.
So it's asking about how to track. I guess we talked a little bit about that before, just saying if that is considered BC, and I think Jenny is just giving us an example here. Jenny, you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I'm not sure that it would be considered a food purchase is my only thought, because it's a gift card rather than a food purchase. So it is like it's a program. It's a Feeding Futures program for sure, but I'm not sure how you would categorize that in reporting. So I'm gonna, like I said, get back to you. I'm gonna talk to my team and talk to the Ministry of Education folks and just see if kind of what the consensus is there, and I can get back to you with some more information.
Sam, before I know
Yeah.
you are busy and I know that you may need to go, but I want to kind of like summary what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So when we purchase from a third party that is make it in BC, that consider BC products, but if we are doing something in-house, then the best way to track is more the ingredients that we are using in. Is that something that is correct? Just a summary as a general summary.
That is a good summary. And we're encouraging those who we purchase from, like vendors, caterers, to be using as much BC food as possible. We can't track that necessarily, but we can ask them to source more BC foods. And not all caterers are going to be making things in-house. So if the caterer is kind of acting as a middleman and purchasing sandwiches from Alberta to send to the school, that doesn't count as a BC food. Like that, you're still purchasing an Alberta sandwich because it wasn't processed in BC. So the main consideration is, where was the food produced and or processed? Where was that final food product made? I know that's confusing. and like I said, we're here to answer any questions. So if you're like, I just don't know for my situation, send me an email and we can walk through it together. Yeah.
I have one more question from Jenny saying
Mm-hmm.
she used the Good Food Box provider. The food that they put in the box is not extremely BC. It's just more Canada. That will consider, she will consider that. If they tell approximately how much is BC, can we use that information as a BC purchase? They have to. She has two schools. She has the online and the order. Yes.
Yeah, if you're purchasing food through a Good Food Box as your supplier, they should be able to tell you, the Good Food Box provider should be able to tell you how much is coming from BC, and then you can track that as your BC food purchases. Yeah.
Daniel is recommending us things here. So Daniel say, I do have a local caterer that supplies pre-made meals from home that is plant-based, plantain of Nosh. Oh, very nice. Thank you. I highly recommend this product. Thank you, Daniel. That's great to put it in our resources.
Yeah, I haven't heard of them, so I'll definitely take a look. Thank you.
Yes. And any other questions, take advantage. Sam's still here. So if you have any, I mean, I know she's very accessible, and I really encourage everybody to reach out to her. It's wonderful because every independent school is very different. So it's always good to have, an expert that can help you with that. She shared a lot of good resources that I have it, and she also gonna share with me. So I'm gonna also share it on the video today when I send it to you guys, so you can have the links to that. Everything is public, so you can always reach out. And I mean, I really appreciate that you came and give us this. It's always good to have real questions with, just to know what is happening in the sector. I encourage everybody who's in the call to stay with me for a few minutes just to, touch base with you guys, but also, I mean, Sam can stay too if she want to stay, but I also, it was very nice to have you, and I really appreciate that you take the time to come, and I will make sure that we reach out to you more often.
Yes, please do. Please do. Thank you so much for having me. And I also, in addition to questions and comments, I encourage you to send me any success stories. I really appreciate hearing about the local food businesses that you're working with. So yeah, just stay in touch and excited to keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
See you again. Bye.
Bye-bye. So now we are here. Oh, I'm so glad that you guys are making and doing things. I'm gonna keep recording just because it's always good to keep at the end all the, all the questions that you have. So I want to check how you guys are doing and any successful stories. Also share with me, please. I'm trying to build right now our newsletter for this term. So any good stories, any sad stories, any struggle stories that you want to share or questions that you want to ask?
Well, I have a story, not sad, actually quite happy. The last couple of years, we've actually really helped our Ukrainian refugee families. We have about 5 families. We are, of course, a private school, so independent school. And like I said, we're smaller, so we're trying to impact our community. And we have one family that you look at, they lost everything to come here. He is a nuclear engineer and his wife was a pediatrician. He's working in an electrical company, making ends meet. So, but they have their children here, and they want them here for their whole education. And we've been able to really support. And one of the biggest one was this just the other day. We had our foods class do a food justice program. So they had to go and actually design the menu and try to make sure it's by BC actually too, and then produce the food, and then we give it out to the families. They made a fettuccine Alfredo with a garlic bread and some other appetizers. And he's like, this was the best food I've had in ages. Like, it was so fresh and so good. And it was, I told the girls that did it, they're in grade 10 to 12, and they just absolutely just loved that this went to a family that fed their, gave them a meal for supper.
That's just amazing. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing. It's these little stories that make me, make us realize that how important is just bringing this funding to all the schools. And I really appreciate that you share. I think they are very lucky to have you, and that there is working and doing this. Sorry, Jenny, I know you're about that. Feel free to write it in the chat if you want. Caroline, yes, that will be considered part of your food procurement. So when you are reporting at the year end, you will be reporting your how much money did you spend on food. You can put it there, or you also can put it on your supplies. When you are the part of the supplying, when you buy toasters or those kind of things, either or. Sometimes if they are in the same receipt, for example, if you go to Costco and buy oranges and fruits and all those kind of things and plates, if there is in the same receipt, don't worry to separate it. You can just put it as a same purchase, as a one thing, as a food procurement. But if you have 2 different receipts, then you can divide it and put it on the second category that it will be supplies or those kind of things. Sorry, you guys are doing, let me go back to my chat. That makes sense, Caroline? Give me a thumbs up if that's yes. So I have Elaine saying we are very encouraged by parents supporting. Oh, that's very nice. I'm glad that volunteers are working and doing a lot of work. Thank you so much for that. Fruits and veggies. I'm glad to hear that they are enjoying. It's good. I can chat with you, Michael. I can send you an email because it has to be based on your on your funding. So I will be sending you an email as soon as I finish. So then we can discuss how much money you can do it. But remember to keep it, depending on the funding, we will just kind of be mindful about appliances and that. But I will make sure that we chat after this, or we'll email you after this, and then we can discuss that. Oh, I'm so happy that they're coming. So today is Wednesday, so you have one of those ones. So I'm glad that you are having that excitement moments to just share and do things. Fruit bowls, all from BC. That's very nice. The kids and stuff appreciate it. That's always very good, I think all these stories always warm my heart, and I hope you guys share some of your photos if you have, or just share me a little phrase or sentence that you want to share, just like Daniel was saying, so I can add you and include those stories, because I know a lot of good things are happening in the sector, and it's nice to share and say that we also have very successful stories. So really appreciate that. There is, as Sam was saying, the contest is still coming for this March. I think it's a great opportunity for students to shine and to be public, and then to be part of the book. So hopefully some of your students are enrolling. For online schools, you can still participate in. I have few online schools asking me if they will be able. The only thing that they have to do is they have to be a class. So they cannot participate individual. They have to make a team effort to work together into that one. I don't know what else. I'm gonna be sharing resources that Samantha has, any other videos that she's been doing, and yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other question or anything else that you would like me to share or to talk. Oh, this is for the online schools. There is, there is coming the contest. I don't have exactly the name. That is I think is working together as a food or something like that. I will send it in the link later today. That is a contest that is happening, and the is open until March 1st. So all the schools can participate, everybody, but the only requirement is that it has to be per class. So if you have an online school, your school can participate, but they cannot participate individual people in your school. They have to do a class together. So if you have 3 or 4 students that will be willing to make a recipe using BC Foods, and then send the recipe to the contest, then they will be able to be part of that. So yes. Sorry, I was thinking about it without saying the name. Yes, Jenny. Thank you. Anything else, guys? Any comments? Any struggles? Anything that you guys need support with? No? Okay. Okay, template for reporting. I don't have anything so far. But you know what? I will try to start asking my colleagues around the districts to see if they have anything. It's very personal about what they've been doing and what I've been learning about in the different districts. Because normally what they do is they buy the full food and they distribute around their schools. And I see a few examples, but they are very, very high level and a lot of details and everything. But I can work on something for you guys and maybe try to make some samples that maybe work. I can share, and it's not official or anything. It will be something that we can all work together to make something that works for schools. But I will definitely work on that. Yes. Absolutely. I will try to find some resources, Caroline. Oh, reports. Yes, I know December was very intense for all of us, so I really appreciate about reports. I know that it's a lot of work, and I know that it was busy weeks, but I appreciate it was submitted. Very good feedback from the ministry with all the work that is happening. Year-end report is gonna come to the same time probably this year, so just be prepared for that. As always, I will give you some reminders of what will be on the report, so you guys can start preparing, but probably will look very similar to what we did. And it's going to be coming a short survey in the next coming weeks, hopefully before spring break. And don't be scared, it's not going to be a big one. It's going to be a simple one, just for me to check with you guys where you are. What do you need from me? Any more specific things or that I can help and support. So I will be sending it in the next coming weeks. I will send just kind of like a very brief message this Friday on the weekly update, and then we will be sending it more in the coming weeks. So just so you keep in mind that. Yes, lots of learning. So anything else? No? Janet, any comments? before we say
No,
goodbye.
No, I'm listening, and it sounds like everybody's happily, merrily rolling along. And I think that the information about what is BC and what is not BC is helpful. And there will still be specific incidences that you can reach out to Rocio, and she'll help you through it.
Thank you, Janet. I really appreciate everybody coming in the morning. You know, I will be sending the report just for the FeedBC, you know, and yeah, just reach out if you need anything. And please, 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 if you have photos or something that you want to share with us, please send it on my way so we can be part of the newsletter. Oh, thank you, Daniel. I will definitely add it in our resource list that I will be sending also in this coming day. So I will try to don't jam all the information in one because I know that can be very overwhelming, but I will be sending little by little so you guys can keep track of that. And thank you so much for everybody who come today. I will be in touch with you soon and feel free to reach out at any time. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day.